Welcome back. My name is Wei Tong. I am coach, co-founder in Powerlifting, as well as a physiotherapist. I've been in the sport since 2012 and been coaching since 2018. Today, I just want to talk about my own training, and it's part of like a training chat with you guys, and for me to just explore more yapping opportunities, I guess. A lot of these things I am talking about in particular, this format of chats is really just for me to bounce ideas off myself, have a documentation of what I'm doing, and if you are going through similar issues, thought processes, that if you're going and as you're watching these videos, that perhaps you'll spark some inspiration, some questions, curiosities about your own training, about my training, and if you are keen to learn more, you can always drop a comment. Okay, so today's date is 21st June, and I'm going to talk about my training as of late. Okay, so there are a couple of things that I want to talk about in my training that I've started doing. The first is Myo-Repetitions. This is just something I have consistently done since I have gone on to Mike Israel's RP app for a period of time. I think it's actually not a bad app. It's largely built for intermediate and advanced lifters. But one of the things that was tied into the program was the usage of Myo-Reps or like how it's called as rest pauses. So as a bodybuilder, if you're watching this, you would be a bit more familiar. So Myo-Repetitions is basically the idea of fatiguing yourself even further after the end of a set. So let's say let me just explain how I do it. So I do cable rows and I do up to 12 repetitions. Instead of stopping there at RPE 8, I rest 10 seconds and I continue another 5 repetitions. And then I rest another 10 seconds and I continue another 5 repetitions. And I will stop when I hit the target RPE of 8 or 9. So for me personally, I am able to push quite hard in this case. Usually when I am training within the rep ranges of 5 to 10, 8 to 12, I feel like crap, especially for my accessories. It feels like my joints are the first to give way, and I don't really get a very good like pump, for lack of a better word. So there's many concepts wrapped around this that I have to go through one by one, but I have always felt like it was more joint work than muscle work. So Myo-Repetitions really helped me in this regard, and I'm really appreciative of it, and I've been using it across my accessories. So for the better part of the year, I've been doing it in almost all my exercises. I started first with single joint accessories like lateral raises, bicep curls, those exercises that are not inherently fatiguing for powerlifters, mainly because one, we don't do them, two, they are not part of our main lifts. So even if I overshoot in my fatigue management on those, it's okay. And for Myo-Repetitions, right, the first time you try them, they can be really fatiguing. So it's good to do them on a particular exercise that like you have more time to rest, or like even if it costs you a bit more fatigue, that it doesn't spill over throughout the week into your powerlifting training. So I do that with calf raises as well. Basically any single joint exercise that I am not particularly familiar with in terms of the muscle group exposure or the exercise itself. So from there on, I moved to powerlifting related exercises. Again, single joint, a lot of close chain, a lot of just static machine work. So this will look like applying the Myo-Repetitions to leg extensions, hamstring curls, tricep extensions. Those are the common culprit. And as I get more and more familiar, I am experimenting with them in my main lifts. One thing that I do notice is that with the Myo-Repetitions, it's really up to you to set a boundary for yourself. because you can really push very, very, very hard and you can accumulate a ton of peripheral fatigue in a very short amount of time. So I usually crash around like week 2 to 3 if I push really, really hard, like RP 9 to 10. And lately, it's really just been about like setting boundaries for myself. So what this will look like is, for my accessories, I do not do more than 2 additional sets of Myo-Repetitions per set. So let's say one main set is 12 repetitions, then plus another 5, plus another 5. That is 22 repetitions total, but there are 2 Myo-Repetition sets included in the accessories. So I do not do more than that. So once I am unable to complete 5, I'll stop the Myo-Repetition set. If I'm not able to do more than 1, so basically 12 plus 5, I'll stop the exercise entirely. So this will look like, for example, bicep curls, 12 plus 5 plus 5, first set. Second set, 12 plus 5 plus 4. Okay, the second Myo-Repetition set is already less than 5, so I'll stop it there. 11 plus 5, then I'll just stop. I'll just stop exercise entirely and I'll just move on. So this could look like 4 sets, it can look like 3 sets. And that's the boundary I set for myself for my accessory work. And that's been something I've just been monitoring this block. I'm also applying to my main lifts, so this is a little bit more of unfamiliar territory. This is actually the first block that I'm doing it with my main lifts. I don't think it works as well. And there's multiple reasons to go through that. First off is I don't get as much of a break. One very important thing that comes to mind is that your cardiovascular ability to tolerate higher repetitions in the main lifts is very different compared to single joint exercises where your spine is not loaded and your lungs are not like under a lot of compression. So when you are bracing in the squat or deadlift, you actually put a lot of stress on your diaphragm and on your lungs. So that does cause you to get very breathless very quickly, especially for squats. So the 2 main lifts that I've been doing this, my repetitions, has been the squat and the bench press. Strangely enough, it's been working well, but nothing to report back substantially as of now. I only limited to 1 Myo-Rep set afterwards, and my rest period is about 30 seconds, mainly because I still have to include the setup again and the unrack again, and it's a lot of hassle. And my total volume accumulated per session is maybe about 2 sets for squats, and for bench press is about 3 sets. I try to do more, mainly because I'm trying to focus on the accessories, but I'm also like experimenting it as a fatiguing strategy for myself. As I'm coming off of like illness from the previous couple of weeks and I've just started my 3rd week, frankly speaking, my strength has been returning very quickly in the main lifts and I'm very happy with it. I'm not sure how much of that is attributable to the Myo-Repetitions fatiguing strategy. I will not put too much stock into it, but I'll just continue to play around with it. I think the final iteration of what it look like is gonna approximate the cluster set. You can look up what cluster sets are, but it's very similar to the Myo-Repetitions. And there have been studies to say like, oh, okay, it's great for strength and it's a time saver as well. I used to do cluster sets for like 2 to 3 blocks and I do not like them at all, mainly because it feels like too much fatigue on the joints again and on the nervous system. So there are a couple of fatigue metrics that you will have to be able to pay attention to when you are employing a lot of these fatiguing strategies. And that's something I can talk about in a different video. Just for now, if you're applying all these, I'll just say start with accessories first. Start with the first few exercises that I mentioned, the ones that do not fatigue you as much in a powerlifting context. Let's say bicep curls, lateral raises, build some big guns, but it does not affect your bench, does not affect your squats. Okay, so what's next is the bench press. So something I've been dealing with for a couple of years now is right shoulder pain, like really like irritating right shoulder pain that has been haunting me for a long, long time, and I haven't really been able to get rid of it until recently. So with the consultation of AI, I dumped all my signs and symptoms and all my objective and subjective metrics into it, and I crushed out like a case for myself. I would say your mileage will vary very, very much on this because one is how you set up your AI model, how you set up your um, instructions for the AI, and three is that what you put in really matters, and do not like blindly take away what you get from AI. It's very easy to get into this kind of like psychosis with AI where you are constantly being validated by the AI, and it just goes a little bit too haywire if you are trapped in that echo chamber with just a computer that will constantly just reaffirm what you're trying to say. That being said, I've been trying out with caution this concept of dynamic centration, and it's something that I haven't really touched on even in my work as a physiotherapist. So, for context, I'm a geriatric physiotherapist. So, a lot of my work is about getting your akong and ama, pachit, machit to stand up again, to walk, to get out of bed, to build some very foundational strength and endurance after a bout of hospitalization or a bout of pneumonia, like a heart attack or stroke. So, that kind of demographics. So, I personally haven't had the like chance to deal with a lot of these kind of cases where I'm looking at very pure MSK or musculoskeletal cases. And with powerlifting coaching, it's always gonna be a lot of like online. So there's not a lot of objective tests I can do on the athlete. So I've been relying a lot on subjective online descriptions of what they're dealing with. So my experiences with musculoskeletal physiotherapy is a little bit more limited. So this is actually a very new concept I'm touching on. So the idea here is as your joint, imagine a door hinge, okay? As your door hinge moves, right, it's supposed to move in a very smooth like fashion as it opens and closes, correct? I'm going to show you a couple of photos to illustrate what I'm talking about, but your human joints work very similarly, but with a element that they would slide and they will roll as well. So if you're a physiotherapist and you're studying like kinesiology for the first time, you're gonna see this image on the left very prominently. You hate it from a kine textbook, but this really like explains what's going on. So let's say you have a joint and you have a rounder surface and you have a more of a concave surface, then how the joint moves and articulates on each other is gonna be different. So you're gonna have a slide, you're gonna have a roll. So for example, this is basically on the left top hand corner. This is the ball joint ish, and this is the concave side, the bowl side. So when the joint is moving, it is doing a slide and a roll at the same time. So when you are doing, let me change my camera. So when you're doing this movement, right, you are technically also causing a slide and a roll in this particular joint. My gosh, my light is like too strong. So for example, there is a slide and roll occurring in the finger itself that occurs for all joints. It's just a little bit different based on the joint surfaces. If you're not a physiotherapy student, you're not a physiotherapist, what does it matter to you? On the right, you would see like you have the glenohumeral joint, which is the arm, the humerus, okay? And you have the shoulder blade, and you can see how it's gonna slide and roll as you're lifting your hand up and down. Okay, so if it doesn't slide as well, this is what is called subacromial impingement. Okay, that is like whole other like kind of worms I don't go into right now, but like subacromial impingement is not really fully validated anymore. But the idea is here that if the joint doesn't centralize itself, it will bump up against surrounding structures of the joint and cause you pain, especially when you think about the bottom of a bench press, when instead of this movement, let me change my camera again, instead of this movement, which is shown in the photo, you have this movement where you're impinging not at the top of the joint, but the front of the joint capsule. Again, impingement is a very controversial topic amongst physiotherapists, but this is just illustration of the symptoms that you might be experiencing and the concept. So what is going on in the concept is basically dynamic centration is the idea that if you are moving the arm up and down and the joint is moving, it should be able to maintain its center position during dynamic movements. So again, dynamic centration, it's the ability of this particular point to remain in the center as you're moving. Okay, very, very complex term that I'm trying to explain it. So what I have been trying to do, because this particular photo illustrates the top end of the top side of the joint capsule, what I'm dealing with is more of the front side, which is the anterior side. I am trying to work on the posterior, which is the back of the shoulder, for the muscles to be like, hey, can you wake up? Can you help me keep my shoulder joint in the center as I am benching? Because with 80 kilos, 100, 120 kilos, hopefully one day on the barbell, the slide of the joint against my shoulder is going to get more and more prominent, and the irritation is going to get more and more prominent. So I'm asking the muscles on the back of the shoulder blade, on the back of the shoulder, to like, hey, can you help me? So there's 3 particular exercises I've gone through. This okay, they're all done with cable, and they're all done with a single hand. And the tempo I'm using is basically controlled tempo 5 for an concentric, 5 for an eccentric, 5 for isometric. So you look like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The idea here is to get the back of my shoulder, the muscles there, to get a little bit more warm up, more active, to keep the shoulder joint where it's supposed to be. How it works, I do not fully understand, in the sense that I cannot just snap my fingers and tell you, yes, dynamic centration, because I'm telling the back of my shoulder muscles to do this, and therefore my shoulder joint is kept in the same like center throughout the bench press, and therefore I have no pain. Or it could be just the posterior joint capsule is a little bit more warmed up now, more blood flow, and the muscle tissue is a little bit more responsive, and the joint is able to articulate a little bit better. I guess that's the explanation. And those are the 3 exercises I'm doing. So the top one is cable external rotation. The second one here on the right is cable roll. The third one here at the bottom is just horizontal abduction. Basically, I'm bringing my hand right in front of me out to the side. I am opening up my jacket and I'm rolling it. Let me just do it again for the camera. This is shoulder abduction. This is rolling. And this is opening up external rotation. you're going to be very familiar with the cable external rotations and internal rotations. It's like a very commonly prescribed rehab exercises, or even like what people like to call like prehab, which doesn't really exist. But basically, it's like a very common conditioning exercise that will be prescribed for the shoulder in the bench press. So I'm doing very traditional exercises, I guess. So that's the idea here. Okay, let me go back to the deadlift now. Or rather, let me just conclude what I'm trying to say with the bench press. So with the bench press, what I've noticed is that I am actually able to tolerate a lot better now. And the first time I tried it, it was amazing. It felt like a magic bullet. And I was very shocked. And this coming from a background of like powerlifting coaching and physiotherapy, that I still learn a lot after how many years? 14 years of training. And sometimes I have inbuilt assumptions, presumptions that are wrong, and I revisit them as and when I cannot find an answer to a question that I've been trying to troubleshoot for a while. And this is one of those cases where, oh, a very traditional shoulder external rotation exercise for the bench press. Oh wow, why are we doing it? But perhaps along the way, there's like a lot of concept and a lot of like knowledge that is buried within the exercise. It's prescribed and it's um, propagated within like gym bro culture or whatever you can call it, and some of the logic loses its hold over time. They just get lost to time, and that's okay. But the exercise and the practice remains as part of culture. So right now I'm just rediscovering why it has a certain function, and it's always quite amazing for myself to think about all these things and to be like, oh, actually, yeah, I have some blind spots as well as a practitioner, and I'm experiencing it as an athlete. And yeah, I just like to say, like, my bench press has been feeling great. I'm very happy, very thankful. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been trying it, so at least like 4 or 5 sessions, and with that, I'm actually able to start to push the pack on my right side. So for the longest time, because of the shoulder pain, my right side, in terms of the musculature, has been really lagging, because it's just the joint just doesn't want to get loaded, and because the joint doesn't want to load, the muscle will give way first, and the muscular development and stimulus is just not as prominent. So if you are someone who is dealing with a lot of joint pain as well, there's just something for you to note, that if you keep ignoring the joint pain, the musculature and the strength development will weaken over time in that particular area. And if you're dealing with like basically body parts that are like have a left right symmetry, then you're gonna notice that one side is gonna be stronger than the other side, more prominent in the muscular development, and that's probably one of the reasons why. So do not ignore your joint pain. Always try to troubleshoot as much as you can. Sometimes you have to work through it rather than around it. Okay, very long topic on my bench press. Let's go to the deadlift. So this is a toxic act for me. So I have been doing the conventional deadlift as my competition variant for a long time, mainly because I can't do the sumo deadlift. I can't, in the sense that as the loads and training volumes get heavier and heavier, my right knee starts to really hurt a lot, and you will get very, very cranky, aggravated, inflamed is what I like to call it, as the workload piles up, and to the point where sometimes it will affect my squat. So my squat training goes to shit, and my ability to walk and stand in daily life just gets affected as well. And that's when it starts to really, really suck. So for the longest time, I've been like trying to work around it, the sumo deadlift, and didn't really like have a lot of success with that. I work on the adductors, which is the inner thigh muscles, and I worked on the muscles around the knee, specifically the quadriceps, mainly because in the squat and the sumo deadlift, the quadriceps are very heavily biased muscle group. Hasn't really been experiencing a lot of success, but again, because I've been experiencing a lot of success in the AI consultation on the bench press, I am trying to open it up with the sumo deadlift. And this is as much intellectual as well as a physical exercise for me, where I am trying to see if I can troubleshoot my right knee and ankle and see if my hypothesis like comes true. So I don't particularly remember if I've sprained my right ankle before, but I think like a lot of people have sprained their ankles before. And with one sprain, you start to develop more issues of instability down the road, leading to more and more like sprains. I believe like anybody watching this has had ankle sprain before. The severity really differs from individual to individual, but with joints and sprains, as the damage to the ligament is a factor, what happens is the joint starts to get more and more unstable. So joints are held in place largely by your ligaments passively, but they are also supported by your active contractile tissue. So you have the passive structure, which are the ligaments, the joints themselves. Um, that is like the scaffolding, okay, that holds your bones to each other. And of course, you have the articular structure as well. But then you have the active contractile tissue, which is the tendons and the muscles, which they are actively doing the stability and the support itself, but they are also moving your body. So your ankle has a lot of intrinsic, basically what I'm trying to say is it has a lot of small, deep foot muscles of the arch, the bottom of the foot, and it has muscles in the calf area that supports the ankle. So as you go through multiple like, sprains and the ligaments start to lose like their ability to support the structure, your musculature around the area is going to start having to offer that support. And with prolonged exertion, like a lot of walking, a lot of standing, side climbing, or very, very heavy loads, like for me, in the example of like the sumo deadlift, you will start to have failure of the muscles to hold up the structure. So because the ligaments are not really like doing their job anymore, the muscles must step up their game, and in a very long chain, the weakest link is always the one that breaks first. So for me, it could be the ankle that is causing the knee pain, and I'll just like to delve into this. This is a lot more of like related kinematics and kinesiology again. So you have the foot arch on the left side. So I have a difference between my left and right. My left side it's neutral and my right side is flat. And when it flattens out, this happens. So the ankle collapses and the shin bone, this particular like bone here, it rotates inwards. So when it rotates inwards, basically the whole chain, we call it a kinetic chain, where you have the ankle joint, you have the knee joint, you have the hip joint. So everything up the chain starts to change as well. So I'm not a runner. I don't really particularly care about running mechanics or walking mechanics. So whether or not like I have like, any pelvis changes, pelvic tilts, hip internal rotation because of it, as I'm walking, I do not really care. But as a powerlifter, so this is where I really want to care a bit more. So when I am dealing with very heavy weights or let's say I go in the gym after walking and standing for a very long time and my foot arch is just non-existent, I experience a lot more internal rotation of the tibia, the leg, and that starts to introduce like a lot of twisting force into my knee itself. Sorry. So one thing to note is that with the knee, right, it actually has a little bit of a rotational as like ability. It is not just a hinge joint where it's like doing this or doing this. It doesn't just hinge, it also rotates a little bit. And the knee is not really like meant to rotate that much. But with the collapse of the foot, and the locking of the hip musculature, right? My hip joint is locked in place. My ankle, once it collapses, is pretty much locked in place. The hip is going one direction, and the shin, basically my femur is going one direction, and my shin is going the other direction. Okay, so that introduces a lot of force, a lot of like torsion through twisting force through my knee, and that's really painful for me. It irritates like the meniscus for me quite a lot. So that's just something that I'm messing around with the hypothesis. So whatever I'm saying to you right now is, oh, there's a set of symptoms that follows it. So basically, when I deadlift very heavy, sumo, I have knee pain, and I experience it as a twisting force. When my foot arch is really, really tired, I experience a lot more knee pain, a lot more locking out of the knee. Uh, those are the symptoms that I experience in daily life and in my training. And I'm using all of this information to sort of reverse engineer, understand what's going on. So this is just something I do with my athletes and my physio clients and myself. This is a case of what I'm trying to do right now, where I am treating ankle sprain for the sumo deadlift. And it's, again, like I mentioned, very much an intellectual exercise as well. So I am trying to make sure that the arch in my right foot doesn't collapse under heavy loads. And I'm trying to see if that can allow me to deadlift sustainably first, and then I'll move on to maybe pushing into the heavy weights, 80%, 90%, 100%, in to just see, like, as I approach the top end, how the ankle responds and how the knee responds. So if my hypothesis is correct, what I'll start to notice is that I can tolerate the working weights first. I can tolerate the volumes, and then I can start to express strength in the sumo deadlift without the knee pain occurring. So multi-step process. I'm gonna start with just exercises to make sure that my arch doesn't collapse in day-to-day life. One thing that I didn't realize, or I neglect to realize, is yes, there's a lot of things that says like, okay, externals outside of the gym will carry into your gym sessions and your recovery. So in my case in particular, what is happening is, if you look at the biomechanics of it, right, is, as let's say I walk 15k steps before I step into the gym, my right foot is really, really fatigued, and I'm really experiencing a little bit of like irritation of the right knee. So the moment I start to load the sumo deadlift, the foot arch just like says, nope, I'm not gonna participate. I'm gonna peace out. You can take care of yourself. And then the knee is just like going through it like a washing machine, like the laundry just spinning around and my knee just going wee. And so that is going to be very different from if I step in the gym with like 1k steps or like 5k steps. And that is like one very specific idea of like example of like biomechanical external stress that is accumulated in the body right before a session. If you like take a look at how like between weeks and sessions where you continuously irritate the meniscus through this kind of twisting force, it's just one thing is like all your lifts start to suffer, mainly because, let's say, even on leg extensions or like squats, you're gonna have like knee pain and you're not gonna be able to push them as hard. So it's just a cascade down. And in powerlifting, injuries are very, very rare, but they are very persistent. So it's just something that you have to be mindful of. So for myself, I'm going with daily quality of life rehab first, making sure that my walking and standing is like great, and then from there, prolong walking and standing. If I clock 15k, 20k steps and I go and train, my knee pain is not gonna arise. Basically, I'm gonna make that weakest link in the chain as strong as possible so that it no longer just breaks under the lightest of load. And then from there, I'm just gonna slowly reintroduce the sumo deadlift through a lot of tempo work, a lot of eccentric work to make sure that I am very conscious of what's going on at the knee, and we see what happens. With the ankle exercises, the foot exercises, it's gonna be way too specific to talk about here. But if you are very interested in like treating your chronic ankle instability, you can just look at strengthening the posterior tibialis, the soleus muscle, and your foot arch through the short foot exercises, grabbing a towel with your toes, letting off, just keep doing it with your toes. Those are exercises that are largely prescribed for the beginning of a chronic sprain. Then as like you return to sport, depending on what sport you are in, you start to introduce a lot more dynamic effort. Like a lot of people like to do both ball stuff. I'm not in that camp in the sense that I don't deal with MSK patients. I barely deal with like dynamic sports. So in the sense of powerlifting, it's going to be a lot more isometrics and a lot more concentric force production to make sure that as you are driving into the floor, that the ankle doesn't collapse. So it's not a lot of like balance or dynamic work. It's going to be a lot more of like pushing through a leg press and making sure that my foot doesn't collapse as I'm doing eccentrics and pauses on my sumo deadlifts, that I'm paying attention to the foot. At least I think that's the whole process and idea of how my rehab will go with my sumo deadlift. Yep, this has been a 40 minutes video. Okay, I would love to come back to this video and be like, aha, things have worked out. Maybe in 2 or 3 weeks time. But it's going to be a very, very long step, probably like 12 to like 20 weeks. So that will be 3 to 5 months. For now, I will still continue to just train the conventional deadlift, continue to get my posterior chain as strong as possible through Romanian deadlift. There's still a lot of things I can do in the meantime while I'm like trying to treat the foot arch itself, because the muscles of the foot is like extremely tiny and there's a lot of just nervous system motor control as well. So we'll work on that step by step. But that's the 3 things that I'll talk about: Myo-Reps, bench press, deadlift. That's everything for now. If you found this useful, share with a friend, someone who is dealing with any particular issues that have been highlighted here. Just want to hear your thoughts. You can comment down below, shoot me a question, call me to yappy, that's fine as well. This is a practice run for me yapping, and I'd love to do it again with you. See you in the next one.